it's time to introduce our keynote speaker of today, the Daylight Talks, Francesco Veenstra. Today he will be talking about transitional society and what kind of implications this has to our cities, to our countrysides, industrial areas. He's particularly not focusing on what we need to do better in architecture, but more what we need to do different. So let's welcome Francesco to the stage and let's hear all about it.
Yeah, so when you get invited to give a lecture, they always ask for a theme, which basically is this. I handed it in, I think 3 months ago, and I slightly changed it. Yeah, if you ask an architect to come up with a picture about daylight, do I need to say more? And I did not change the presentation in the last 20 minutes. Chief Government Architect, so that's basically the title which already stands for over 200 years. So in that role I will be here today, but also in the role as an architect, talking about light. And I was thinking back to a similar kind of event also in Eindhoven. I think it was over 15 years ago in one of the VELUX auditoriums here in Eindhoven, talking about artificial light. And I was pretty much overwhelmed by people like Verena coming up with the sort of the scientific approach of light in that sense. And yeah, what are we doing as architects in terms of using light, whether or not it's artificial light or it is daylight. And I think it's less scientific and it's more about sensors. I'm part of a team. Not only in my company Vakwerk architecten, but also in what is called College van Rijksadviseurs, where we tend to not only focus on architecture, but also on urbanism and landscape design. And we strongly believe that if you look at a design or at an approach, you always need to start combining different type of backgrounds, different type of professions to come up with the best possible solutions. Well, as already mentioned, so my background, I will also not explain that, but I will explain this. So this is the team of Vakwerk architecten, actually sort of at the start nearly 7 years ago. And where, well, you see Paul Ketelaars, he's in the room there, he's one of the board members of the Daylight Award here in the Netherlands. We are a practice focusing on creating impact in the living environment for people. And of course, daylight is part of that. But the impact that I am trying to achieve with the team in Den Haag is basically focusing on the entire country. So all different kind of projects, but also different kind of regions where we try to look at potential changes that we are facing towards the future. Projects like this. So this is an urban development in Amsterdam, a marineterrein, where there will be numbers of houses being located together with educational facilities and working facilities, and where we strongly believe that these kind of areas, because they have a very strong history, need to have a refocus on how we want to use it in the future. Maybe not with how we programmed it 10 years ago, but how we would like to program it in 10 years from now. Or the Dutch Parliament. It's one of the most prestigious projects in the Netherlands, and the main reason is its historical heritage. How do we create an environment in these kind of buildings that will last for another 100 years or more? Also art is a very important part of my task. So how can we use, how can we introduce artists in the field of work of architects and urban designers, urban planners? With this as a picture of the Dutch Central Intelligence Agency, with quite an interesting piece of art from an artist that came up with the idea of sort of a fully enclosed body, like a night with, I don't know for what reason, had yellow feet. But also trying to think about the future, how we build the future. Because the future needs to be different than how it currently stands. So thinking about the use of different kind of materials, thinking about the influence of climate change, also in light of daylight. Also the effect, not only the side effect of daylight, which generates a lot of energy and heat stress also inside the buildings, but also on the outside. So in general, what we are trying to look at as College van Rijksadviseurs is at all the transitions where we are currently in. So the permanent state of transitions. Just to identify or to point out one of them is the change in how we live. Of course, we are talking about the shortage of housing, but we also need to think about how the living environment needs to start adapting to our changing population, not only in size, but also in age of people or different cultural backgrounds. How we create neighborhoods that are easy for people to live in, how or support potential connectivity between people. So it requires something similar to what you were referring to in your previous presentation here. It is about architecture, but I would say how architecture could serve a society where people meet and live together. Because we will have more people in the Netherlands, and more people in the Netherlands will mean we will have many more households, not the standardized typology of a home as we currently know it, but we need different typologies to deal and support with the huge numbers of people that need to find places to live in our cities and also our villages. Just to point out one example of it. This is a project in Rotterdam, I would say my hometown, and it's a project which was designed by Van der Broek and Baakma before the Second World War, in the era of the interbellum, where the thinking about the floor plan, how people potentially could live closer together in a built environment of stacked apartments, still would have a high level of quality as a living standard. So as you can see here, the design is completely different to how we currently look at floor plans. So design where there is like a day type of use available and also a night type of use, where 63 square meters provide space for 6 people to properly live in. So thinking about not only the concept of bringing in daylight in what we call in the Netherlands een doorzonwoning, so light penetrating from both sides of the building block, but also creating like an interior environment that allow people to change according to the needs during the day. And this is what we need in providing enough homes in the Netherlands in the level of density as we know it. We need to create more homes in our cities, in our villages. There is enough space, and if you bring more people in, if you increase the density, it will also mean that all the facilities in our cities, in our villages, will still be available also in the next decades. One of the projects that sort of tries to stipulate this concept of densifying our cities in a way that it also serves all future issues around climate change, for instance, is a large project we work on at Vakwerk architecten in the city of Leeuwarden, actually the city where I was born, and the city where they actually embraced all the requirements necessary for future living. Okay, I try to focus on daylight. Actually, it's pretty nice to have some daylight in an auditorium. It's quite rare. To visit on daylight projects I've been working on over the past 30 years. And of course, every project has a different story. And what I asked myself preparing this lecture was daylight actually the key factor in designing this project, or was it basically sort of a result of the process? Well, I leave it to you people in the room here to judge it and ask me the question after my presentation. This is my first project in the mid-1990s. Well, it's not my project, I worked on it. It's all the projects, I worked on it, but obviously it was a process of a team going through, working together with clients and also with users. This is what was called Trusttheater in the city center of Amsterdam, in a monumental building. Quite unusual to create a theater environment on the inside, but actually there, which I sort of found out preparing this presentation, daylight actually was a part of the conceptual approach of this design, trying to bring daylight in such a way that it supported the whole experience of entering a theater environment, going out for a night to a theater performance and meeting people. But also trying to use daylight for the people, for the actors, preparing for this, exercising for their plays. So as you can see here on the right, using the natural daylight coming from the windows adjacent to the Amsterdam Canal side, bringing daylight in, being able to close off when there is a performance and opening it up when there is an exercise. This is the building facing the canal. The other project, I have a total of 12, so you can count down. This is the second one, and it's an extension to an office villa in the city center of Utrecht, where we were called or asked to extend the total number of square meters by twice the size of the existing building. And well, there was no possibility whatsoever. This was also a Rijksmonument, monumental or heritage grade 2 listed building. No possible way to extend to the backside of this building, and therefore we come up with the idea to design a garden, but having an underground space in the garden, which you can see here, creating, I would now say almost like a Tadao Ando kind of space, or at least the same material, and partial spaces to bring daylight into the working environment for the people inside this building. And it took quite some convincing, and that is maybe what you also explained in your lecture. It always takes a lot of convincing to bring the client into an idea, in this case of an underground office environment. There was a lot of pressure from the employees about the fact that they would be working underground. And so then you need to have like models and of course nowadays movies or very photorealistic images to bring them into the idea of creating these underground spaces. Third project is another theater. It's a theater where we worked on in collaboration with a cartoonist called Joost Zwarter. He already came up with an idea of creating a theater almost like one complex made up out of different architectural components, as you can see here. And also here, well, maybe not daylight, but the other aspect of light view was a very strong part of the overall concept. So had a central foyer space, almost being an indoor covered square facing the opposite houses in this very small street. Also creating roof lights to bring daylight quite deep into the building. And again, similar, and maybe that's what we learned from the previous project in Amsterdam, to also create daylight inside the theater space itself. So generally for the actors to also have a proper working environment. So Verena was talking about the office environment. Yes, we know because of all kind of regulations that daylight needs to be proper on your work spot. But for these kind of people, There is no regulations whatsoever. Eh? So yeah, can you envisage the idea that not only people sitting behind a desk have a proper place to work, but also everyone else? Well, that doesn't really count for this building, because usually people entering in a box the chapel in Rotterdam, because they're dead. It's part of the ceremony, bringing people to their final resting place. This is the smallest project I think I worked on. It has a size of just over 100 square meters, with a roof of over 300 square meters. There's a whole idea behind it. I will not explain it, but talking about daylight and talking about creating an enclosure and how light can help creating sort of an extreme intimate environment, and where daylight basically supports the level of intimacy. And what you can see here is the fact that the continuity of the wall can be opened up by two huge doors, where on the one hand the coffin comes in. Then, as you could see in the first image in my presentation, the coffin will be in a temporary situation just in the middle of this picture, here in this piece of furniture. And then once the ceremony is closed off, the coffin will move to the final resting place. Yeah, so this is a project, I think this is a project where we won the VELUX Daylight Award years ago. I don't even know which exact date it was, on the island of Texel. And yeah, the story behind this project is a story of a museum, which again, nowadays in my current role, I see a lot, that the museum wanted to expand actually on a site where there was hardly any space to expand. So the majority of this space is underground. The underground space creates sort of the dark environment which was necessary for all sort of video kind of registrations of all the artifacts, and sort of the above ground space tried to connect to the surrounding buildings of the small villa of the village called, the small village called Overschild. So we came up with this roofscape, trying to connect to the surrounding roofscapes, again creating almost like a public square covered, a square which is used on several occasions also for the neighborhood to come together, but also an environment where all the artifacts collected from the sea, collected from the North Sea and the Waddenzee, were exposed in a way that they give the feeling to the visitors that they basically are floating into or in the light, sort of representing almost like the water surrounding the island of Texel. Well, here you can see how the building sort of connects. So looking back at this picture, on the inside it's extremely light and bright. The outside, because of the density of the wood that is surrounding the glazed facade, it really starts to merge with its surroundings. Another project, a library in Birmingham. It's a project actually where we met, well, Peter Zumthor was not one of the competitors, but Rem Koolhaas was. Well, I did see his face like that. I was a little bit scared as well. I have an Italian name. He never asked me whether or not I speak Italian, by the way, but I will ask him if he speaks Dutch, because he usually speaks English. So this is a project in Birmingham, Library of Birmingham. We were asked to, after winning a competition, to develop a building that really sort of creates the connectivity between the inside and the outside. So a building that includes a total of over 40,000 square meters, with a huge, what we call a lower ground floor, which basically is a basement, but a basement with a lot of daylight penetrating in. I just found out that I did not put a picture of the basement in this presentation, but also using a frieze, so a facade, sort of similar to what you saw in Texel, surrounding a fully glazed facade, creating sort of a very playful sequence of shadows and light during the day. Also, coming up with stories to clients, also telling a story about reduction of solar gain on the inside of the building. I don't really think that worked out really well. This is a top view from the top part of the building, where like a huge circular space brings daylight all the way from the top, over 60 meters above floor level, to the center of the building. So again, it is a building block of 50 by 50 meters, so very deep floors, using all different kind of architectural ingredients to bring the daylight into a space for people to actually experience it. Yeah, so this is the City Hall and train station in Delft. Well, as you might have noticed, these are not Vakwerk projects, although all the partners of Vakwerk are also former Meccano partners. This is also a Meccano project in the city center of Delft, with a huge building block providing the accessibility to an underground station, where daylight again was key, and where we collaborated with a company called Bentham Crowell Architects, responsible for the underground railway station, and we were responsible for the design from ground floor level all the way up to the roof level, and where we tried to sort of synchronize daylight coming from the top parts of the building into the lower levels where the platforms of the train station are located, as you can see here. So light coming from the south side, where there's a huge amount of light penetrating in, and then further entering the platforms on minus, I think, 10 level. Also some skylights, and also quite an expressive roof that fully reflects the light which comes from all sides of the building, as you can see here. Yeah, so it is about light. It's also about orientation. So if you create openness in your facade, and in this case it's around the entire building, a fully glazed facade. So if you arrive as a visitor to the city center, you have the possibility to immediately orientate and see which exit you need to take from this station. Yeah, this project in Norway, and actually it was this project when I found out that I have some winter depression. It's a project in a small city called Kongsberg, just like 3/4 of an hour drive from Oslo. I visited this place quite a few times, and if you visit Norway, let's say after September, and you have a little bit of a winter depression, yeah, you're not a happy person, I would say. So what we try to achieve here also is to bring a lot of daylight into this facility. It's a building of 25,000 square meters. It contains 3 different schools. It contains a cultural center, also a small kindergarten. There are different functions together, which are usually not common to bring together into one volume, and where we again try to bring the daylight as deep into this very large building as possible, using large roof lights, using big open permeable, light permeable facades, and creating sort of an outdoor wooden skin to also create sort of a massing which was necessary from the state authorities. Again, a picture showing how this daylight and also the type of materials work together to create a certain impact with architecture that moves the senses, and also create enough health, I would say, as a healthy living environment for the people, especially the students working here on a daily basis, as you can see here. And here, so this is a picture where there's a huge window in the back, providing also daylight into a theater performance area. And what I experienced also in this project was that bringing the experience from other projects, such as the Thrust Theatre or the library in Birmingham, into this project, made it really convincing towards the clients to actually introduce these kind of architectural ingredients and to create a proper environment to live in, to work in, to exercise in, to educate in. So this is a hospital which was the first project of Vakwerk Architecten from 2017. We started with the three of us. We did a competition. Actually, we did not hire people to help us there, but well, members of our families sort of joined in. Yeah, we really had a dream to start working on health projects, because we believe that there's a lot to gain, there's a lot to win in creating better environments for people to be there sometimes, not only a day, but many days a week. By again using daylight as a starting point in the development of the design. Of course, well, as you can see here, again, a roof light to create shadows, to create northern light into deep spaces, but also the whole idea of waiting, which is probably the time most spent for people who visit a care building, a hospital building. Waiting always adjacent to windows, bringing daylight in, but also to having a proper view to the outside. So this is, well, I know it in Dutch only, dialyse. So it's an area where people stay most of the day to circulate their blood, having a vista to the outside. So to link the hospital environment to the adjacent natural area of this location. And you can imagine this is a different kind of environment and different kind of experience than when you would be located just in the center of such a huge building. And the same is with the upper floor areas where all the patients will be located in their hospital rooms for 3 or 4 days a week. Where also daylight is part of the circulation strategy. So if you walk towards the light, you have a different kind of orientation than if you enter sort of a fully enclosed, artificial lighted environment. And the same is with the bedrooms. It's all about connectivity to the surrounding landscape, but also the fact that it encourages people to get out of bed. So from research, we know that if people stay in bed, and especially elderly people stay in bed for 10 days or longer, their age will increase with over 10 years. So they become more vulnerable to all sorts of infections, and for that reason we want to get people out of their beds, to keep them mobile, and to speed up the process of getting healthy sooner. This is one of the other early projects we did in Vakwerk. It's a holiday park. I never thought that we would be working on a project like that. But in collaboration with a landscape architect called Inside Outside, they came up with the entire strategy of the area, and we were asked to design the entrance building to this complex. So it's a client with a shortage of money, although now looking at the number of people visiting this park, that was maybe a misunderstanding. But we needed to create sort of a building concept that was easy to build, that was based mainly on bio-based materials, and that could create an indoor experience almost as if it was an outdoor environment, as you can see here. So buildings made up out of wood with a lot of glazed parts with natural ventilation, with an environment that sort of links to the identity of the holiday park, and with interior spaces that almost could be exterior space as well. So very much focused on how people would want to experience a holiday park even when it's bad weather and people need to stay on the inside. This is one of the last projects. So this is our office in Delft. Yeah, well, I would say I worked on it. I mainly work inside this project. It was actually designed by Paul, so I will take the credits, but he did all the work. And the project is about the reuse of an existing industrial building where daylight comes in already in a very nice and I would say natural way. This building was not occupied for over 30 years. So when we entered the building for the first time, it was a fully abandoned space that needed, I would say, some love and tender care. And so we tried to keep the building as much as it was. It's also a national monument, and try to intervene with some interior elements that again would encourage people to arrive to this building as a working environment, to create also all the technical standards necessary, but yeah, to create something different than what you normally would see when you apply all these technical rules for a proper workspace. So this is how we found the building. More or less, this is how it looks like now, where we try to create this balance between daylight and artificial light, and where we also try to balance the historical elements of the use of material in the past and using new materials, bio-based materials, creating sort of the interior environment we actually wanted to work in ourselves, and where we also strongly believed, I mentioned in the first part of my presentation that art and artists are potentially having a strong influence on how we shape our environment and how we can create sort of an added value. Well, this is a collaboration with an artist creating this wall painting, sort of merging the old of the building with the new interior elements and the planting, which is also part of the space that we created, both on the inside but also on the outside. And so you could question, maybe coming back to Verena's presentation, are we trying to sort of create the best possible almost clinical approach to quality of a workspace, or is it okay to have a less proper workspace and sometimes just have your coffee outside? I think this is the final one. It's a train station in Ede-Wageningen, so it's basically the port to the University of Wageningen, where also light was a very strong factor in the design approach, the design concept of this project. So a building that is both a connection between the two sides of the railway tracks, which is a connection from I would say the Randstad, so cities as like Amsterdam, Utrecht, Den Haag and Rotterdam, to the south part of the Veluwe, one of our most sort of treasured national parks in the Netherlands. But it's also a place where people just have to wait for their train to arrive, which is not very uncommon in the Netherlands. So the requirement was from the client to create a huge roof over not only the platform but also over the railway tracks, resulting in an almost 150 meter long structure, again a bio-based structure. And you must know that the design was done also in Meccano in 2014. At that moment I was responsible for the preliminary design, and when we started Vakwerk, well, the client was looking for a contractor who then hired Vakwerk to finish the job, resulting in this project. So what you see here is the platform coverage, where the pattern of roof lights basically sort of recreate the idea of the woods of the Veluwe, the national park, with a continuously sort of changing pattern on the platforms as a result of the changing light on the outside. Well, finishing this part with this picture, I did not explain it from the start. Well, as you can notice now, this is the chapel with the blue walls, and where the light maybe is like an extremely small version of the Pantheon in Rome. So the final part is the future. So if we think about how we want to introduce light in maybe a far better way in architecture, in urban design, as we currently do, you need to look into what the future will bring us. And what we strongly believe is that the future requires massive changes in thinking, in how we use materials, how we collaborate with each other, how we live together, and also how the economic system should change in order to provide equality for everyone. And the major spatial tasks that we are facing in the Netherlands are huge, as you can see here, and it will increase with the number of facilities and infrastructure that is required to generate enough energy for our country to properly work and to keep a certain level of wealth as we would like to have it and would like to see it in the Netherlands. You can also think about different ways, and that was already expressed in the previous presentations. So maybe use daylight in a smarter way, like the example of the canopy facing south, where in summer times you will have shading. In winter times you will have daylight and therefore also energy penetrating a building in a way that you can also benefit from it. It sounds extremely logical, and I think it's also what happened in the past, I would say hundreds of years ago, but because of the idea, which, and that's not criticism, but is also generated in institutions like a university like this or in Delft, the idea that everything can be man-made and that we move away from nature as we have done, I would say, over the past 150 years, creates all these problems that we are facing at the moment. So maybe looking back at the logic of the past and trying to integrate it in a more clever way in our built environment in the future. I finish off with a few slides of an exhibition which is currently running at the New Institute in Rotterdam. It's a collaboration between College van Rijksadviseurs and the New Institute, and where we are looking at the next 100 years and where the New Institute is looking back to the past 100 years. And that is also one of my findings of the last few years, is that we always work in the current era. We sort of find it really difficult to look far into the future, but we almost never look back. And in the past we have done so many interesting exercises or explorations or projects that we can still learn from a lot. So that is also something I would like to encourage you to do more. Look to the past, look into the future, and try to work that out today. This is one of the two projects that are highlighted in the exhibition, where the superstructures, we think it's new. I mean, the line, which is currently under construction in Saudi Arabia. Biopolis is a project from the past, which is basically the same as what we try to achieve in the future. And there was a reason not to build that project, which is in the lower part of this slide. I already mentioned bio-based and nature-inclusive architecture. Well, this is one of the projects in this case in Zwolle, which was the winner of a contest which we launched 2 years ago. which will be built. So this is one of our roles, to encourage the what is also called in the European Union the new European Bauhaus, using different materials, but not only different materials, also a different approach in how we run projects, how we collaborate on projects, how we try to find better ways to get people in the living environment participating in these kind of processes to work towards a future where, you could say that light could be a solution in all the changes that we are facing today and tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francesco. Are there questions? We have plenty of time for Q&A. Yes, there's a question in the back.
Thank you very much for the very, very interesting presentation. I was just wondering, so I'm coming more from the economic side, and there is this huge discussion about energy efficiency, right? We have now the office buildings in the UK, which needs a certain energy label as an example. So how do you deal as an architect who wants to freely create your vision basically, but then you have all this boring regulations of energy efficiency? Because I'm also thinking, as an example, if you put a lot of light into a room, you have an issue maybe with cooling or heating up this building and then creating like kind of an energy efficiency. So how do you deal with that trade-off?
I think that's a really good question, which I would say is all about balance. On the one hand, there is the issue of having proper daylight inside a building to create a healthy environment. On the other hand, we deal with the heat loads that are gained from the amount of energy that comes in, or sun that comes in. And so far, we especially from the 1990s, looking at work of for instance, Norman Foster, his office, you see that we found sort of technical approaches dealing with this issue and trying to use the technical skills to come up with proper solutions. I don't think that works anymore. So we need to find different ways of adaptivity of the human body towards the space that we are in. And there is also from the past many good examples. So what we see now is that the climate in the northwestern part of Europe is starting to get closer to the type of climate in southern Europe from the 1950s. And already back then they knew that densifying their cities and their villages in order to still bring daylight into the small streets, but to keep it out as much as they can with thick walls and smaller windows, could still allow them to deal with too high heat loads, etc. So I'm wondering whether or not sort of the new developed neighborhoods would start to already anticipate on climate change in a way that they sort of reflect architecture and urbanism from other parts of Europe. I would find that a very logical approach. And then I would say only then you take climate change serious.
Yes, there's one more question.
I want to draw attention for one specific type of building. It's in Paris. It's the Institut du Monde Arabe, and the facades from that building are developed, made of diaphragmas. And I never saw a project like that again, where it was technically developed so much. So I want to draw attention to it, and perhaps it can be another good solution to develop more about for our future cities, our cities which are getting more dense. So it's more or less a question of getting too little light, daylight, but there it was because they got too much light. Yeah. So I want to draw attention to the Institut du Monde Arabe.
Yeah. Well, yeah, my first response would be there's always a reason why a project is not being copied or repeated. And I think this is a project that sort of clearly stipulates that. I think as a concept, it's a really beautiful building. I've been there a few times. I've been there once when the facade was still working. I have been there twice when the facade was out of order. And I think that sort of strengthens my idea of trying to slowly move away from only technical solutions in buildings and trying to work together with nature. And it could be a diaphragm approach, but then it should be extremely low tech, or the use of canopies, which is already a concept that works for, I would say, 10,000s of years, not only for sun shading, but also, for instance, to keep rain out. So if I bring it back to even modernism, the era where we try to start inventing new ideas in architecture, in detailing, in the use of materials, and where we thought that we could basically solve everything by putting enough technical ideas on a solution. I think we moved into the time where we maybe should say goodbye to modernism and go back to nature a little bit. Yeah.
And going back to nature, as you were mentioning, did you revisit the school in Norway?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
I think maybe it was being built 2015, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about the nature nowadays, 9 years later?
Yeah. Well, this is also a really good point. So, no, but in the past 4, 5, 6 years, we have experienced like a major change in thinking. So, in how nature can or should become part of our built environment, and not only ground-based nature, but also related to architecture. And I would say the same about the thinking about the existing buildings. So we moved away from the idea that if we want a new building on a site, that we basically demolish the existing one and to rebuild something completely new, to the idea that we have to look at the potential of refurbishing. And that all started with the idea of creating sort of a sustainable approach to a design, so reusing the material. And, but it also supports the whole thinking about heritage. And I think that starts now to get better in balance. So on the one hand, the reuse of buildings, on the other hand, the connection of buildings to nature and to the natural environment. And I think the example in Norway, but actually I would say maybe except the hospital in Meppel, all the buildings, they did not have like a single idea about how nature could be properly being included in the concept of architecture. On the 2 terraces in the Library of Birmingham, we designed roof gardens, not necessarily with the idea to create nature or like a biodiverse environment, but to create an outdoor space for people to have like a book reading terrace. And so the whole thinking, I think, has shifted in the last few years, and I think that will have a huge impact on architecture and urban planning for the next decades, for sure. Yeah.
Maybe I have a follow-up question about this. Do you work together nowadays with other people, other professions, to make the architecture maybe more include, so with ecologics, for example?
Yeah, well, the answer is, the simple answer is yes. Although that is, well, in my role as government architect, I really try to include that now in all sorts of tender procedures, to develop like a coalition of different specialists, also including ecologic specialists, of course, the landscape architects, etc., as we know it, architects, urban designers, structural engineers. But what we see at the moment is that there are more and more specialists entering the field of the built environment that we also as central government need to start including in the processes. And I believe that once the government is taking ownership of setting up the right teams, also private parties will do so. And yeah, and I think it's also necessary because of regulations that are currently already applicable to every project. So just handing over or sending in building forms with architectural drawings only is not enough anymore. So you need to come up with more specialties, specialisms to convince and to tick all the boxes. But it needs to become more inclusive in the way how we work.
There's a question here also in the front.
I was wondering what's like to be a Rijksbouwmeester and how did you become it? Not
I didn't expect that question at the daylight talk. Well, to me it's actually quite impressive to like, be in these kind of rooms on a weekly basis, engaging with people. So also for that reason, I didn't come in today just like 5 minutes before the lecture and leaving. Well, I will leave shortly after for a meeting, but because I strongly believe that engaging with the people in our environment, but also with people living in the neighborhood, understanding the real issues is part of my work and also creates like an extreme learning curve to myself. So that's like on a personal note. I think there's always a lot to do in the built environment, but especially now, because all the transitions which we are part of, and it would be good that maybe everyone, well, maybe should not become chief government architect, I don't know, but have the sort of the exposure to all the information I am exposed to, because it enriches me as a person. Of course, I have the ability to bring it to my office and to people I meet, but there is so much out there that you can immediately implement in the daily work. Ideally everyone should experience that. And how to become it? Yeah, I don't know. It was a phone call.
All right, yes, there is one more question in the back.
So coming back to your trend of bringing back nature, I'm from Korea, and we're very culturally, technologically advanced, I would say. In a very short time, we're all about high-rise living spaces. It's hard to find a living unit without the air conditioning, and I find it very challenging to introduce this idea of coming back to nature in this kind of culture. What would you say is the first step to doing so?
I would say reading the book of Rem Koolhaas, Back to the Countryside, because that is very much related, I would say, to more the Asian and the African type of space planning than here in the Netherlands. And the reason for saying this is that I think that every area in the world has its own sort of local, not only identity, but challenges. I had the privilege to work on a project in South Korea close to Seoul on a golf course area. And that project was executed in a time where, and I would say 10 to 15 years ago, when still the idea was to just bulldozer like an entire greenfield and to create this sort of artificial landscape for, I don't know, 500 people. So extremely exclusive to just play golf there and have like extremely good meals and drinking French wine. Is that really the future we would like to live in? I think that is a question, especially in countries like Korea, where the difference between income is extremely high and people don't have the possibility to choose between living in a city for a very high price in an apartment or living in the countryside, which is only exclusive to a small group of people. I think that is what needs to be questioned. And I think on a smaller scale, that also needs to be questioned in a country like the Netherlands. What we see is that students nowadays live up to the age of 30 in like shoeboxes. Maybe that works for the early years as a student, but does it still work for a person who is 30 years old and is not really into a relationship for that reason? So distributing space, I think, is something to think about. And especially redistributing the existing space is something to even think harder about, especially in the Netherlands, but also in Asian countries. And I think that the issue with some of the Asian countries like China, where there will be a drop, I think, of about 400 million people living in China now that will not be there anymore in 20 to 30 years, also have a huge impact on quality of life in the cities. So the enormous growth of real estate is already starting to create major issues in society and will create even more issues when we look towards 2050. And that might be the case in this highly technological environment you lived in South Korea, but also, for instance, Taiwan. Taiwan is actually the same. So I think that the issues there are really different from here, but I think the real question you can ask is about equality. Is equality on a level that we as citizens find acceptable enough to deal with?
Thank you.